Something I think is not uncommon, and I'm sure is going through some of your minds, is like, where do I find the time? Who has free time in their calendar, just sitting wide open, ready to become an advocate? All right, yes, I'm gonna follow up with you after. So what I wanna ask is, for the folks on our panel who are active participants in an active association, Jonathan, Chad, I know, Rich, I don't know how often you guys are meeting, but I think paint a picture of how you build time into your schedule. Like, being your own boss is one thing and you get a little bit more of the freedom, but there's also a lot more responsibility when you are the founder of your company or the leader of your company. Can you give the audience some tips on how you carve out time to dedicate to your leadership roles? Jonathan, you want to start?
Happy to. Prioritization is just literally where we put our emphasis, is what we believe in most. And I do believe that there is going to be a major shift towards the folks who are doing this in a way that is, complying with regulations, supporting right regulations. And the group that's on that side, I think, is going to be more and more of a, shall we say, isolated group. I think that there's going to be those that are and those that aren't. And so my prioritization is going to be just to be on that side. And so I get to work with a lot of my partners, our client partners, and it is really my business. I guess it's weird because I look at my world within Well and Good, and then I look at my world within AZRT, and they are symbiotic. They work together, and I don't really feel that there's much of a separation. One pays me and one doesn't, then that's a big difference. The advocacy, there's not that side, but I look at it as just this is something that we are fortunate to have an opportunity to shape the landscape, and my priority lies within that. So yeah, I don't know if that's a great answer to the question. I didn't know that one was coming.
I like that.
You don't have to be the president of your organization. I've been working with Dana for a couple years. It's like herding cats sometimes. I'm one of those cats sometimes. But you don't have to be leading it. You can sometimes just help get it started, start that conversation, be that coalescing point within the group, and find that person who might have more free time. Like I could not do what Dana does for Mile High House. There's a significant amount of work. I'm sure everybody on this group knows how much work it is, but if you can be a small part of it, like I can carve out a couple hours a month to help build our membership. Like, we've gone from no members to pushing 100 in Denver paid members in less than a year because of carving out that time to make it work. So if you have that group in your market, get involved. If you don't have it, start the conversation and then figure out who has the time or who's willing to put that time into it. It's either that or nothing happens, or again, somebody writes your story for you, and it might not be a good one.
If I could add, potentially the benefit of having a group like Rent Responsibly has been huge for us. We are all volunteers on our board, and we do pay Rent Responsibly to be able to do a lot of the back end aspects of our statewide group. And so without that backing, I think there would be a lot more of an administrative lift on the actual board members. And so it is huge return on investment to have a partner like Rent Responsibly.
Time is a construct. Just make more. Just kidding. The thing is, I have a suggestion, and this wouldn't work in every market, because I know in some places people are the lodging companies are maybe getting like lobbied against by the hotels and that kind of thing. That's not happening in our markets. So I know that's an issue in some places. If that's not your issue, one of the tricks is that you can form your lodging association and invite the hotels. And sometimes people will say, well, why would we have the hotels? It's vacation rental, but it's a lodging association. So really, like Park City, where they've had a lodging association for 30 years and it's very, very successful, the hotels are also involved. And here's why that is really helpful. I'm talking the big hotels. They're not owned by small business owners. They're owned by big corporations, and they have big, giant teams of people that have little, small jobs. And so they have more time. So if you have a lodging association and you get like the Marriott or the Hyatt or the Westin or whatever, and you get them involved on your lodging association, then you can have some of them on your board, and sometimes they can really help with some of the lift because they're not running a small business. They have a boss, and they're trying to impress their boss by, getting involved in local organizations. And so they're oftentimes able to help with more of that work on the board. And that can really help your association to keep going.
I love that.
That sound bad, but
No. It works in some markets. In some markets, it may not make sense, but I love that that's what you guys have done. How many of you have standing meetings on your calendar with your teams or your family or whomever? Okay, for all of you who don't, congrats, that's nice. I love that for you. Standing meetings are a great way to get shit done. I swore for you. Because when you have a standing meeting on your calendar, you know that meeting's coming up. It's going to happen every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever it is. And you're going to hustle to get the work done before that meeting because you don't want to be the jerk that shows up and is like, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't done anything. So I think a great way if you're trying to find time to carve out for advocacy or getting engaged is to put a standing meeting on your calendar. Block your calendar off. Otherwise, somebody else will take that time from you. So that's a great way to control the time. I don't know if we have Slido questions. I'm just going to keep going with our questions, but if you all have questions, raise one of your hands and we will make sure to answer those questions. A question I have for you, John, this is, everyone's talking about the crystal ball of the future, whether it's 2025 or just in general. So my question for you is, as someone who helps short-term rental operators stay ahead with tech and strategy, how do you see the future role of advocacy evolving in the industry? And what should operators be preparing for as we look to the future?
I can envision a world where standardization of short-term rentals is not local any longer, where it spreads. And if it does spread, then we have to be at the table to control how it spreads and make sure that those regulations work for the greater good of the industry. So we're mainstream now. We're not this kind of tiny little offshoot of the hospitality and the lodging industry. Now we're mainstream. So it's kind of naive to really think that those types of regulations are not going to try to be standardized across the industry. So we have to control the narrative.
I love that. Any other panelists want to jump in?
I would agree with that. I mean, I think we've all seen the extremes. We talked about New York and thousands of listings basically getting shut down overnight. But as a result of that, you've got New Jersey that has kind of embraced short-term rentals. Same thing happened in Orlando with Kissimmee. You've got Orlando, you can only do short-term rentals legally if you are physically in the home and host the guests while they're there. So Kissimmee basically there's 17,000 listings that support a lot of the short-term rental housings there. So I think there are a lot of positive things happening in other areas. We're dealing with the ordinances in the Atlanta metro area. So there's a lot of other counties and cities that are embracing the tax revenue and having reasonable regulations. And so the more of those counties that we can, foresee kind of putting standardized, reasonable regulations in place, it will kind of give us a better comfort that there are a lot of different areas where you can do this within reason and not have these restrictive things happening. So I think there is a good outlook for that. In general, there's also a lot of state level legislation, like for Georgia, for example, there's a preemptive bill that will prevent local jurisdictions from outright banning short-term rentals, and I think that's taking on across the country as well. So I think, it's not all dark and gloom and certain areas and certain pockets. There are a lot of outlying counties and cities that are embracing short-term rental operators and housing and value that as tax revenue.
I'm coming to you, Jonathan, and just a fun fact to share with you. The number of statewide groups in the last 5 years has risen from 3 statewide associations or alliances, whatever you want to call it, I recommend association, to 19 in the last 5 years. So we're seeing a movement of a statewide approach. And Jonathan, you are part of that movement. We just had a call last week. Anybody from Texas here? Well, not like Jonathan didn't already have enough on his plate, but he is helping drive statewide alliance formations across the country. So curious, John, what do you have to say about the future of advocacy and regulations from that level?
That was the first thing I was going to mention, was just it's an unlock. The statewide unlock that happens when you have that group that is, of course, representative of the local communities. Yes, it needs to oftentimes even integrate with some of the local alliances and work with those folks. But when you have a statewide group, it changes so much about preemption bills, which Rich just mentioned, to ensure that those exist. You also have the aspects of making sure that there is actually some exposure from the OTAs. Airbnb and Vrbo specifically, they are looking for the statewide groups. They are saying we want to support them, we want to give every bit of our resources there. It's impossible for them to go in and help to the level of the individual small groups. They are looking to have that. And the statewide unlock is huge. So if you're not working towards that in your state, I would encourage you to start that process and start to bring the associations together and work towards that. The other thing I think I see as some of the advocacy future or the regulatory future is a little bit more of what we've seen in maybe what's considered the master's rule, which is that in essence in Augusta, Georgia, they allow folks to operate short-term rentals for a period of time, a 2-week period of the master's. We've seen this in New Orleans where they are allowing in essence certain events to open up. Paris was a big example of that during the Olympics. This may not be great for operators, but basically the allowance to kind of not enforce those policies during big events such as Super Bowls, things like that. I think it's going to be a big part of the future. And lastly, having a hotel license is going to really, really benefit you in urban markets, I feel. So doing everything you can to kind of work towards hotel licensing in urban markets.
All right, we've got a few minutes left. Not seeing a Slido, so we're just going to keep going through these questions and make sure you guys feel super empowered. One thing I do want to share that Jonathan didn't mention that AZRT did do during the Super Bowl was they put out a whole campaign on how to educate operators. So in those instances, when I hear about cities opening up, not enforcing regulations during times of a major event, I kind of like hold my breath and feel like a little bit of like queasy in my stomach thinking about some of those outcomes. All we need is a shooting at a reckless operator's property that didn't know how to vet a guest. And we just think about the reputation that can go down the toilet in those moments. But a gold standard would be what AZRT did when they had the Super Bowl a few years back. And they just put out a whole campaign on what it means to be a good neighbor, what it means to be a good host, a boot camp, so that anybody that's looking to capitalize upon that time and open up their property understands this is the standard that you need to follow to ensure the most positive outcome. So I think that's even more of a reason why every state, every community needs to have some sort of professionalized representation.
And they will come to you as the statewide group and ask, what is that boot camp that we should be offering if we're going to open that up? So yeah, again, it allows you to kind of help those folks that may be doing it just for that short period. It does at least bring a seat to the table.
I think if we go back to that crystal ball a tiny bit, seeing 19 statewide organizations is awesome. I think that will continue to grow. I know when I had my conversations with Pittsburgh City Council, the first question they asked me, well, what is Philly doing, right? Like we can see in the news that the New York ban has done nothing for housing. It's, if anything, like it's kind of almost good for us because it shows it didn't really work, right? Politicians, they're not lazy. They're very busy. They have a lot going on. They want to know what the answer is. So either we get to give them that answer or the person that hates short-term rentals gives them that answer. They will look to other cities and other states. So as we continue to kind of align, I think this is a new industry in the scheme of things. There's a lot of different ways to regulate it. Some are going to be successful, some are not. We have to champion to our politicians which ones work. When I sat in front of the Pittsburgh Council, I told them all the cities that did a really good job. And I said how bad it was with Denver banning this, how it didn't do anything. I kind of just pointed at that to the point where somebody who was anti-STR brought it up, and the council member, I saw him roll his eyes as soon as the guy mentioned Denver. So getting out in front of that and helping control that message, I think is our crystal ball, is that we will continue to see some standardization across what good, strong, effective regulation means.
I love that. Yeah, the politicians, it can be intimidating. I mean, I talk about this all the time, and then I go give public testimony in Colorado, and my hand is shaking and my voice is shaking. And I'm like, wow, even if I help and mentor and coach people, it can still be really intimidating. But just remember that they, like Chad said, they have a stack of 100 different bills or potential legislation on their desk, and they are not an expert most oftentimes in a majority of them. So it's our job to educate. Otherwise, we'll see ridiculous legislation that is clear that they didn't talk to a short-term rental operator when they dreamed it up as a solution. And those are really hard. Santa Fe has an instance that just makes it impossible. They think people book your calendar in like sequential order, like from the top to the bottom. And we know people book throughout the year at different times. And it was just a mess. So it's an example that you really do want to be a resource for legislators so that they go, I know I can talk to Chad. Chad's going to help, like, let me bounce some ideas off him.
I think we had one question from the gentleman.
Yeah. Great happy hour question, because I think we could talk about that for quite some time. At least I know I could. Does anybody on our panel want to answer that question?
I don't think they want to get rid of short-term rentals. I think they want to get rid of problems. And if they think short-term rentals are the cause of the problem, that's why. What you have to point to is that lots of people throw parties. It doesn't mean it's a short-term rental. Like they are getting constituents complaining to them. If we can paint the positives and they understand, like, well, yeah, like my neighbor also forgets to bring their garbage out, like, or forgets to bring it in. It's not a short-term rental problem. It is a bad code enforcement problem. Yes, if short-term rental hosts are doing a poor job, that's the advocacy group's job to help steer those people, because they might not mean to be breaking the rules and making their neighbors upset. We have to help regulate that as well. But my personal belief is they don't want to ban short-term rentals. They want to ban the problems. And
Yeah, and another popular problem that a lot of jurisdictions point to is affordable housing, which time and time again, we've done feasibility studies in Atlanta. What we do in the short-term rental space has a very little impact. If anything, it kind of helps with affordable housing. It doesn't deter it. And so I think it goes back to what Dana said, is education, is educating those folks on the good things that short-term rental space brings to the economy, the ability for a city like Atlanta to host large events. The World Cup's going to be there. There's been a lot of large events. There's not enough hotels to house those folks. There's a film industry there. So there's a lot of those things that you can educate legislators on. And unfortunately, it's the bad press, the bad apples, that the knee-jerk reaction is, well, let's just do away with it if that's what the problem is. And it's usually a very small percentage of operators that are causing those issues to come up.
the legislators don't know anything about our industry. When I talked to them in Pittsburgh and I told them that our total amount of short-term rentals made up 0.48% of the total housing stock, he's like, that's it? I was like, yeah, like not even 1%. I'm like, realistically, is that driving up the needle for affordable housing? Like, no, right? But that's something that they point to, and that's what the word is out there. So we have to fight that collectively.
But it's different in every market.
Yeah.
Like like where I am in ski towns, it's about affordable housing usually. Like urban markets, it can be the parties, it can be all these different things. And then again, like you have people that are in the elected positions or whichever positions, and they want their town to stay the way it used to be, or they want to move forward with something new and not. So it's like depends on the market and the people that are in those positions, but it can affect this industry no matter which issue it is, which is the point of getting ahead of it and being organized before whatever new issue comes up that they want to like pick low hanging fruit is what they think they're doing. I mean, I think the officials that are doing this, they're trying to help solve the situation. It's not like they're, like out there with pitchforks, burn down the industry, but they think they have low hanging fruit to solve whatever the problem is. And they can pull this lever and it doesn't always work. But that's why if you're organized, you can get together and show them the information that they wouldn't otherwise have.
We just add, I know we're running short on time, but one of the things that is crystal clear, if you have a neighbor and they're throwing wild parties on the weekend, and they're an Airbnb host that's just violating regulations, right? That happened to me. I have a management company. I do short-term rentals. My neighbor on Lake Lanier had it literally as an event venue. They were throwing weddings. So there are solutions for that. The county that I'm in has a very clear short-term rental ordinance. You have to apply for a license. You have to get an inspection. You have to notify your neighbors who the contact person is. You have 3 occurrences and your license gets suspended. And so I went to the county, complained, so did several of my other neighbors, and we shut that bad apple down. So there are ordinances that work and that are proactive in managing those things. all the problems that are existing are things that we wouldn't want in our neighborhood either, right? And so there are regulations, I think, that are out there that are reasonably impacting, positively those results.
So we're over time, and I just want to be respectful of the following session and their start time. So we'll skip our rapid fire, but if you do want to know our rapid fire advice, by all means, do come up to us. Just reach out to me, Dana@rentresponsibly.org, if you have any questions about how you can get a group started in your community or your state. And I would just say, as parting advice, I hope you just take one action that these folks have shared with you today and put them into practice. Don't assume that somebody else is going to do it for you. Advocacy can feel daunting, and that's not a bad thing, but at the end of the day, it does have to start with you. So just remember that we all have power to make a difference. Thank you so much to our panelists for participating, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your conference.